From script to screen, every film is brought to life by visionary creatives and executives, all sharing one mission: to captivate the audience. Hosted by award-winning movie strategist Kevin Goetz, our podcast, Don't Kill the Messenger, offers a filmmaking masterclass through intimate conversations with Hollywood's most influential voices. And now, your host, Kevin Goetz.
Few people have shaped the independent marketplace the way today's guest has. Someone with a deep command of the global ecosystem of development, financing, and distribution. Across his career, Stuart Ford has produced or executive produced nearly 80 films and series, assembling more than $2 billion in independent financing. He's earned Variety's Achievement in International Film Award, been named one of The Guardian's 50 most influential people in global cinema, appeared multiple times in the Variety 500, and in 2023 received Variety's billion-dollar producer honor at Cannes. He's the chairman and CEO of the super indie AGC Studios, and previously founded IM Global, building it into an international studio powerhouse spanning North America, Europe, Asia, India, Latin America, and the Middle East. Stuart, I'm very much looking forward to this conversation today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Me too, Kevin. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We have got so much to unpack. First off, I would love to hear, in your own words, what exactly you do, mostly, because you do so many things.
Well, first and foremost, I'm the chairman of AGC Studios, and I oversee pretty much every aspect of our business. So that essentially encompasses film and television development, film and television production. We finance or self-finance or co-finance film and television. We sell or license film and television globally. We manage our own marketing and publicity in-house and business affairs. We have an unscripted division that works on unscripted formats and documentaries. So I get to flex a lot of muscles every day I come into the office.
For years, you specialized in international. That was your thing. Are you still the international guy, or are you really more equal parts domestic and international?
I think I'm equal parts. I definitely came up on the international side of the business. I think a lot of people did think of me as the international guy for a long time.
Well, you're still considered one of the, I'm going to say this for our listeners, one of the 5 best in the industry for years now. I can think of my favorite, Kathy Morgan, Glenn Basner, Stuart Ford. I mean, who else is of your caliber?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure there
Nick
are plenty.
Meyer.
Yeah.
No,
sure
there aren't plenty.
They're not all as longevitous as me, but there's plenty of talented people in that area of the business. Glenn Basner and I have been peers really since the late 90s.
He's your biggest competitor.
Competitor and friend in the business. I moved to New York to work in the industry in the late 90s. He was coming up at a company called Good Machine, which subsequently became Focus Features. So we knew each other at an early stage in our career. And in fact, before I launched off from being a studio executive into the entrepreneurial world, Glenn and I talked at length at one stage about partnering together. And
that would have been
jumping
formidable.
Off together, yeah.
That could have been really, really crazy.
Well, we'll never know what might have happened.
Okay, I want to go back because you said Glenn came up through Good Machine, which became Focus Features, and you, of course, came up through Harvey Weinstein and Miramax before it became the Weinstein Company.
Yeah, I was a Miramax kid. Before that, I came up through the British film industry and the British independent sector.
Go back to your British roots. You were born where?
Liverpool, in the northwest of England.
You're Liverpudlian.
Absolutely.
Damn, you and the Beatles, right?
Yeah, there are others as well. I think Daniel Craig is a good shout, is a more famous Liverpudlian than me.
Give me another one.
Oh, famous Liverpudlians.
Because you should know them all. Was it not all the Beatles, though? Were they?
Yeah, no, they were all from Liverpool.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, we're about to launch a Beatles TV show. It's a proud moment for me.
You're going to tell me about all of it later on in the broadcast. I want to just talk about a young Stuart starting out in the world. Aspirations to be in the movie business?
Absolutely none. In fact, truthfully, when I grew up and where I grew up, there was no path into the movie business. It never crossed my mind in the first 20 years of my life that I would ever go down.
What did you start doing?
I was very into sports when I was a kid. I was a good athlete.
Let's just call out to your two sons who are both into sports.
Both very good athletes, yeah.
One in basketball and the other one is
tennis player. Yeah. So yeah, I grew up as a very sporty kid and good academically.
You kind of have it all going on, Stuart. But what did you think you were going to do later in life?
Well, so I went to university. I went to Oxford to study law. And it was only at Oxford that I got my first sort of skirmish with the entertainment business because, of course, I met all these super cool, interesting people, some of whom were into music, some of whom were into theater.
What did your parents do?
My dad was in the software business, and my mum was a tax inspector.
And siblings?
Sister also went to Oxford a few years behind me and became a lawyer.
So when I think of Liverpool, I usually think of, oh, you're going to hate me. Please don't write me letters, listeners. The other side of the tracks.
Little bit. It was a rough,
right?
tough city, particularly in the 70s and 80s.
Right, that's where I was going. But yet you both go to Oxford. That's pretty impressive.
Bit of luck, a lot of hard work, I think. Yeah. No, I think there was some luck there.
Did you become a lawyer?
I did. So what happened was I was at Oxford. I didn't do a whole lot of academic work, as I recall, but I met all these cool people doing interesting things. I managed bands, managed comedians, sold merchandise. So that was my first inkling that I want to be an entrepreneur. And
I was going to say, we know we can spot each other.
Right.
Am I right or wrong?
No, absolutely.
And you can't teach it.
Right. So that's where I thought I want to work in entertainment, but I want to make money as well. And so when I left Oxford, I didn't want to go too far off the straight and narrow or waste my Oxford degree. So I went to law school, but I thought, I know, I'll become an entertainment lawyer.
Where'd you go?
Law school in England is a different thing. It was only a year because if you do a 3-year law degree, law school is a shorter qualificatory period in England. So I went to law school for a year.
And then you passed the bar.
Passed the bar, became a junior solicitor. I was never a technically great lawyer, I don't think, but I decided I'm going to become an entertainment lawyer. And luckily, I was hired by what was pretty much the number one entertainment law firm in the UK at that time. And this is in the early 90s. So that firm, and in particular the lawyer I worked for, represented most of the best British production companies at the time, the likes of Working Title and Goldcrest. So I had this immersion in the British film industry, indie film industry in the early 90s, which was something of a boom period then.
And you did transactional, not litigation.
Yeah, transactionally. It was representing producers putting together films and movies.
Invaluable.
Yeah, and I, apart from working for what was probably the top entertainment lawyer in the UK at the time, I also spent a lot of time representing the top talent agents in the UK, a guy called Duncan Heath. So both he and the lawyer I worked for, Mark Devereux, they became my sort of mentors. And for several years, I had a blast. This was the time when British cinema was going through a real boom period. This was Trainspotting. This was Four Weddings and a Funeral. This was Notting Hill, The Crying Game, the Merchant Ivory films, Mike Leigh, Secrets and Lies, and Naked. Great stuff. So that was pretty cool, and I was enjoying that. But I also was definitely a pretty ambitious guy in my 20s. I had a sense there's something bigger out there than the British film industry.
Right. United States.
Right. Well, exactly. And this was also a period, we're into the mid-90s now, where American independent cinema was really enjoying a boom period as well. And in particular, probably Miramax films were the stars of that particular universe.
Brand. People don't remember that.
Right. So I was there in England working in British independent film, but running off to movie theaters to see the Tarantino movies, to see Swingers, to see Clerks, as we called it, Clerks, as Americans called it.
Clerks.
Yeah.
Clerks.
And I thought, this is an even cooler universe. So it happened that Miramax's UK office were clients of the law firm, and I bluntly sort of fluttered my eyelashes a bit and persuaded them to hire me.
Who's they?
The Miramax UK people. So that was good. The people in New York said to me, why don't you come and work here instead of in London? And
Great.
I was in my 20s, I was unmarried, I was ambitious. Why the hell not? And that's it. So I moved to New York in my sort of mid to late 20s and went to work for what was then the coolest movie company on the planet.
And what was your first interaction with Harvey?
First interaction would have been sitting in a meeting with, there's a lot of people there, and he was in a horrendous mood, munching on a tuna fish bagel fairly repulsively, I have to say. And I'm pretty sure the bagel got thrown at somebody before the end of the meeting.
But as long as it wasn't you.
It wasn't me. I kept my mouth shut and hid.
When did he recognize you as being someone who could really help him and actually run his international practice?
I never particularly aspired to qualify at the New York bar. So when I went to Miramax, I wasn't allowed to hold myself out as a lawyer. And I worked for a guy called Charles Layton, very senior at the company.
He started Blumhouse with Jason Blum.
That's right. So Charles was a super smart businessman. His office was literally in between Harvey and Bob's office, almost like a boxing referee.
Oh, my Lord.
And he would work on the major deals for them, the stuff with Disney, the big co-financings, TV output deals. So I was working with Charles, and therefore I was right in their visibility from an early stage.
Oh, my God. I can only imagine Harvey and Bob. I have many stories of the two of them just going at it.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't pretty.
It was not pretty.
I was shocked. Imagine here's me, an Oxford-educated lawyer coming from the UK, and suddenly I'm in the jungle. This is the American movie business. Yeah. This is New York. This is the Weinstein brothers.
And no one was better. Let's give credit where credit's due. No one was better than they were at that company at that time.
At that time, they're at the top of their game as studio executives.
You must have learned a ton, let's face it.
Everything. That was my film school.
What did you learn most from Harvey and or Bob?
I think you can put it into two buckets. So firstly, I shifted through various, in the end, senior roles at the company. So I had this very rounded film education. I ran overseas production offices. I was co-head of acquisitions, buying all of these prestige dramas and foreign language films. Then I became head of international sales.
Hold on. When you say you buying,
I was the guy sitting up all night at a film festival.
You were there. You were the one in Sundance who had to do the calls all night or the bidding all night long.
I was the guy who'd get on the plane.
What better education?
And fly to Paris and try and buy Amelie before anyone else saw it, or that kind of stuff.
Okay, sorry, I've got a million questions, but let me ask you this. What's the one that got away from you and you heard the wrath?
The one where I got the most wrath, interestingly, didn't turn out to be a great film. And so it was a film called Enduring Love.
I never even heard of it.
Roger Michell directing, based on an Ian McEwan novel, and working title were going after it. And I think during that period where I was in charge of acquisitions, I feel as if it was the only one of any substance that we didn't get that we wanted. And I definitely got a shellacking for that. Of course, the fact that a British director who'd made his first 3 films with working title opted to make his next film with working title didn't spare me any.
I know, but like loyalty, I kind of respect that.
Of course,
right?
I think it was always going to working title. But I remember there was a little bit of a postmortem on that.
Did you have the authority to up the bid without getting approval? Like if Harvey says, get this for me, do not lose it. Did that mean that you had another $5 million or something to play with?
Well, again, we're talking about early 2000s here where people were not texting and emailing quite as fluidly.
So he was very present.
Yeah, if I was going overseas to go try and make a deal on something, then you would have to run with the ball to some degree. Now, I don't think I ever closed the deal without at least putting the phone call in, saying, here's what it's going to take.
Right. Reserving all rights.
All that. So you'd have to be a little bit cute. You'd have to be in the room ostensibly closing, but making sure that before you signed a piece of paper, you'd made the phone call to New York.
Understood. Let's go back to your 2 buckets.
So there was the bucket of this incredible film education. And when I ran international sales and distribution, then it's not just the sales, it's overseeing the marketing and the publicity campaign globally in 70 territories. And you're working really closely with filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino and Anthony Minghella and Kevin Smith and James Mangold. So that was an incredible immersion program for me in how to work with world-class filmmakers in sales, in marketing, in publicity, in deal making.
Oh, wow.
That's where I learned my movie business skills.
And it was film school.
Yeah,
it really was.
It was film school.
Tell me the second bucket.
Second bucket is as an entrepreneur, because those guys were hustlers and they were entrepreneurs. And again, I wasn't really sure whether that was me. If you'd have told me when I first moved to New York, you're going to parlay this into a lifelong career at a Hollywood studio, that would have made perfect sense to me. However, over the course of those 6 or 7 years, I sort of felt, nah, I want to do this on my own.
Okay, I had that epiphany, that moment of aha, where I said, I don't want to go with this other corporate behemoth buying the company I currently work with. I'm going to venture out on my own. What was your aha moment?
Aha moment was actually mid-2004 the rumors were rife that the Weinsteins and Disney had fallen out and that they were not going to be around for much longer. My employment contract was up, and I actually got involved in an attempt to buy my hometown soccer club. And so that gave me a good emotional reason to say, okay, I'm going to fly the Miramax nest. I'm going to get involved in this bid.
And if it wasn't movies, they probably weren't that upset that you were leaving.
Correct. That gave me
Very smart.
an exit. And also, I think
Ted Lasso is your next step.
Sort of, exactly. And that was a really fun ride. You know, my hometown soccer club is one of the biggest in the world.
What is it?
Liverpool.
It's just called Liverpool?
The Liverpool FC, yeah.
FC, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the top 3 or 4
Division
clubs in
One.
the world. Absolutely, yeah. So it was big news, yeah. And I had American partners, and these days, American owners have acquired a lot of the big European
Did you do
clubs. No, we didn't quite pull it off, but it was quite high profile. It was on the back pages of the newspapers and in the business pages, and a lot of the kids who I grew up with who maybe hadn't heard from me for 10, 12 years, they have that sort of...
You were a rock star.
Well, they had that sort of JFK moment, whereas where were you when you heard that idiot Stuart Ford was trying to buy Liverpool?
Was that a huge disappointment?
No, I was terrified we were going to pull it off. I had no idea what I was doing.
Great line, Stuart.
Yeah.
I was terrified we were going to actually pull it off.
But it also enhanced these sort of entrepreneurial feelings that I had. So my wife and I talked about it, and we were living in New York at the time, and it was a case of, are we going to move to Europe so you can jump into the soccer business with both feet? Or are we staying in the US so I could carry on my career in film and entertainment? And I decided I wanted to stay in the US, but I wanted my own company.
Genius.
To do my own thing. And that's where I, to cut a long story short, moved to LA, and we started I Am Global.
Why'd you do it in LA as opposed to New York?
It just felt like that was the epicenter of the business. And New York had been a hotbed of indie film during that period.
Sure.
But I felt as if, okay, I've done New York. I'm going to go to LA.
Was there a white space at the time in your business? There seemed to be a glut of foreign sales agents, and I don't mean to be disrespectful because you're so much more than a foreign sales agent, but that's how one would have characterized you in the early days. You had a foreign sales company.
Yes.
And who financed it, first of all? Who bankrolled it?
Or bankrupted it, nearly. I had a few partners early on. I definitely kissed a few frogs. I had a German public company called International Media Gruppen AG.
Was that during the Nurem market?
Yes. And
the insurance scheme?
They had real problems, and 6 months into the life of IM, that was the International Media Gruppen, they hit a massive wall, and I lost my partners very quickly. I had a few other dubious characters circling around the company.
It was a scheme. I've been doing almost 4 decades. You're 3 decades plus now. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, we've seen scheme after scheme. They come, they're successful. They usually rob or rape the business, and then they leave. And somebody loses a lot of money. Yeah. Time and time again. Am I right?
Absolutely. You see that cycle again and again. So maybe I proved my entrepreneurial chops a little bit, but I borrowed $5 million from a hedge fund in London, basically picked up the baton and started running like hell.
How did you get $5 million? Had you had any track record in the beginning?
I mean, really, all I had was my pedigree as a former studio executive. Wow. And there was still the halo effect of Miramax in those days as well. So I think it was largely based on that and a little bit of personal friendships and stuff. But that was...
And I venture to say they got their $5 million back and then some.
2.5 years later, they got it back.
What does IM Global stand for?
IM was International Media Group, and that was the German public company who insisted having...
But you got the name after it collapsed.
Yeah. Well, the company didn't collapse. They basically said, we're broke. You better find yourself another backer.
So you owned a majority of it or a large part of it because your hedge fund obviously were partners in it as well.
And so we ran with the ball for a couple of years, and then we built a little bit of headway as a sales agent, and then there were 2 films that really broke out the company.
What were they?
First one, which was more of the kind of film that we used to handle in the Miramax days, which was Tom Ford's directorial debut, A Single Man.
That did well?
Yeah, it did very well. We did very well with it internationally in the foreign sales marketplace. And I think the film was beautifully reviewed. Even though
it was a stunning film, first of all. But I don't recall it being a breakout hit.
Domestically, it didn't particularly work, no.
And what was your second one?
So the second one was Paranormal Activity.
I think I've heard of that one.
Paranormal Activity had a long journey to the big screen, as you know. It was
Slamdance before it was Sundance.
Right. It was bought by DreamWorks at Slamdance.
For like some crazy, like $250,000, I think.
Well, yeah, because they really wanted it just for a remake.
Exactly. They weren't even going to distribute it.
At some point, not very long after, I think maybe 6 months after Slamdance, and the film was totally in limbo at DreamWorks. Nothing had happened. I was asked to watch the film, and I watched it in a conference room, bright strip lighting. There was something there, something unsettling about the film, even though obviously it was a less than ideal viewing experience. And the producers were sort of really flailing around, trying to find some way to show DreamWorks there was a movie there. There was something to persevere with. And I made an offer for the international rights on the film.
You remember what you paid for him?
$250,000.
That was in addition to the $250,000 that DreamWorks had paid?
Yes, for the domestic and the remake rights, exactly.
I see. And would you have had kissed into the remake rights had they remade it?
No.
Did you get all the sequels and all of that as well?
We got a participation.
Wow, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible story. Jason Blum, who's been a guest here and a dear friend, I think said it was going to home video and it was sold. I think, wasn't it Stars?
I mean, maybe they did a Stars deal and that bolstered them to then
exactly.
go and
he
give it some theatrical
he begged
exposure.
them to get it out of what was essentially not turnaround, but to get out of the deal by paying the deal off and then getting the movie back. Some version.
There was a campaign. Jason, who takes a huge amount of the credit for having the vision to see what that film could be, he was constantly bombarding DreamWorks, saying, you got to do something with this. And then I think we played our part because Paramount acquired DreamWorks and the film was now over at Paramount, but still in limbo. And we decided to, although ideally we'd have had some kind of US release to tell foreign buyers about, we decided at the American film market that year, screw it, let's screen the film for foreign buyers. And we orchestrated a midnight screening of the film in Santa Monica using my own old Miramax tactics, tried to pump it up a bit, loud rock music playing in the auditorium. We wouldn't let the audience in until 5 minutes before the theater. So as the foreign buyers were showing up, there's a line of people 2 blocks long to get in, like what's going on here? And of course, the film in a packed movie theater played through the roof.
Well, also it did not have its ending yet, its final ending.
Its final ending, that's right.
And
Good memory.
That's when I came in.
Okay, that's right.
Saw it, and who was the person, if you remember, who suggested that final ending?
Well, I'm going to say Kevin Goetz.
Yeah, Steven Spielberg.
Was it?
It was Steven Spielberg who saw it and said, you need to do this or this. And apparently they did this reshoot. It came back. We tested it. Came up 15 points, 20 points. And that's when
Paramount decided, okay, we'll give it a go now. We'll release it.
It shows you, listeners, just how much all of us have a little bit of input from all these different touch points. What do they say? Success has many parents.
Right. Absolutely. And that film somehow wiggled its way through to become...
But it did take a lot of us to do different things on it. I think Jason should take most of the credit.
Yes.
You benefited greatly. I didn't realize you took those rights. Genius.
Bought me a house, and 2 years later we sold the company to Reliance, the big Indian conglomerate, which actually, to join the dots back to Spielberg, they had also invested in DreamWorks. And I Am Global was their slightly off the radar little independent acquisition. I used to call myself the flea on the elephant's ear to Spielberg. And so now I'd sold the company, I'd made money, we'd built some headway, and things were getting interesting.
When we come back, we're going to continue to talk to Stuart about his life continuing with I Am Global and then starting his next iteration. We'll be back in a moment. Listeners, the Motion Picture and Television Fund is a nonprofit charitable organization that supports working and retired members of the entertainment community. This wonderfully run organization offers assistance for living and aging with dignity and purpose in the areas of health and social services, including temporary financial assistance, case management, and residential living, and has been a crucial lifeline to thousands during and beyond critical times that our industry continues to experience. To learn more, visit mptf.com. Please join me in helping others in our industry during times of need. There are so many ways to offer support and get involved. Thank you. We're back with Stuart Ford. Stuart, you're now off to the races. You have 2 successful movies under your belt. What happens? How do you evolve the company? Because now you're getting involved in producing. Now you're getting involved in bigger financing deals.
Yeah.
What happens?
Well, you're exactly right. So with the Reliance backing, we decided, okay, we have to start owning these films, not just selling other people's. And again, that's where I think the entrepreneurial drive and zest comes from, because it becomes a much more interesting business when you're not on the hamster wheel of make a movie, sell a movie, make a movie, sell a movie, is make a movie, own a movie forever.
And what were some of the early movies that you owned?
The first film we ever financed was a Jason Statham film called Safe.
God, he's so reliable.
Well, funnily enough, at that point, he was not that reliable because all he'd really done was Expendables, which was really more of an ensemble film, and a few British things like The Bank Job. So we were one of the first financiers to take the leap on let's make a, by indie standards, reasonably expensive movie where it's all about him.
And what else?
We financed a bunch more action movies.
You owned them.
Yeah, we owned them. But at that time, those kind of mid-budget action programmers were quite a fertile space to play in the indie world.
There's a couple of particular movies I just want to focus on because I worked on almost all of your movies. You've been a wonderfully loyal client to me, and we've been friends for so many years. But you understand the power of the audience. You have been an advocate, like I have, of really listening to the audience.
Absolutely.
And as an indie, spend the money. You put your money where your mouth is to really try to unpack what they're saying and to get their opinions. Hacksaw Ridge is one very near and dear to me, as my godson's father was the impetus of that whole thing. Gregory Crosby, who brought it to David Permit, who brought it to Bill Mechanic. How did you get involved in that? Because it ended up being nominated for an Academy Award, of course, and
I think it won a couple.
Spectacular movie.
Yeah. That was brought to us by David Permit, who was looking for co-financing. It was Bill who brought it to us, now you mention it. But he was looking for co-financing. He had someone willing to write a check against the domestic rights, but he still needed, I think, $28 million or something. So we took quite a big leap of faith and we pre-bought the international rights for a $28 million minimum guarantee.
And MG is the words we use. The acronym for minimum guarantee, that is an enormous amount of money, even with Mel Gibson. And Mel Gibson, who had some challenges in the domestic space, but still was very, very strong in the international space. Fair to say?
Yeah, I think as a director, he still had a lot of fans in the international space. But it was a risky film. It was a World War II.
It's a World War II
drama about
drama.
A pacifist starring Andrew Garfield. This was not a slam dunk.
And you better lean into that action or you're going to be sitting on a really expensive drama. And the action was nonstop. It was so spectacular. You must have been very proud of that.
That worked out really well. I would say in that I Am Global period, the 2 films that from a cinematic perspective I'm most proud of was that one. And then we also co-financed for, again, a big number, Martin Scorsese's film Silence, which he'd wanted to make for about 30 years. And we put up a pretty significant chunk of the budget on that film.
Did he stay on budget?
He only went over by a little bit, and my exposure was capped. So frankly, I wasn't looking too closely.
You didn't mention one that I really, really liked called Midway.
Midway. So that was an AGC film.
Okay. So then perfect segue to get to AGC.
Yeah.
Because I want to move this along because we could stay here literally for 5 hours and feel like time just
movies.
Yeah. Tell me about how you got into AGC. You ultimately sold I Am Global and the reliance of it all, correct?
Yeah. So Reliance and I sold I Am Global, if you like, for a third time. There's a hedge fund, then
Absolutely.
It was the Indians, Reliance. Then we sold it to a Chinese private equity group in 2016 for a fairly significant amount of money.
And you had to stay on?
I had to stay on, but not for long, as is often the case when the founder and captain of the ship is no longer in charge of the ship. Tensions arose, so I was out of there within a year.
Good for you.
Well, also, I was out of there with my then partners having not perhaps played things as well as they could have done, so I had no non-compete obstacles, no non-solicitation obstacles, and I was able to go out, raise capital pretty quickly, and go up the streets and start AGC Studios, which we did in 2018.
2018.
Yes.
And what are you most proud of with AGC?
We're still here. It's
been
an unbelievably
good times and bum times. I've seen it all.
We've made nearly 45 films and TV shows.
They're such impressive titles. Give me 3 of them.
Hitman, Woman of the Hour. We made a great documentary, The Tinder Swindler, that's became a huge success. We made one of the biggest independently financed TV shows ever, Those About to Die, with Roland Emmerich.
You mean it was about to die and you resurrected it?
No, we made it, then it died.
You made it and it failed?
I don't think it failed. It did quite well internationally. It didn't do well enough domestically to justify a second season.
But you came out okay?
We came out really well. We made maybe a 7 or 8% margin on 10 hours of television at $15 million an hour. We did just fine.
What about Moonfall?
Moonfall, we weren't a financier on, we were a seller. So I'm not sure whether the financiers of that film have recouped yet, but we did okay, frankly, out of sales fees.
Is the pre-sale market dead?
No, absolutely not.
Not?
No, the pre-sale market's very much alive and kicking. We're making 5-6 films a year using that model, but it has evolved.
Tell us how it's evolved, because it used to be, oh my Lord, AFM or any of those markets where you would come in with a letter from some star that would enable you to bank these projections. That doesn't exist anymore, does it?
No, that's, I think, in the wild west of when it first started, yeah. I first got into the foreign sales business when I was at Miramax, running Miramax International. So as you could imagine, by then it was a pretty evolved, sophisticated business. We were doing $500 million a year in international sales, and it was all about, in the Miramax way, the presentation, the marketing campaign, the publicity, it was all about showmanship, but it was also about showing distributors why this film was a good bet for them to take. It was making them believe this film is an asset, not a risk. So I've sort of tried to stay true to that principle throughout the last 20 years. And the foreign pre-sale market still works very well, but I think maybe the bullseye has gotten smaller, and you really have to assemble and structure the film near perfectly for the economics to work. So the budget level has to be right. The commercial auspices of the film have to be right. The talent package has to be commensurate with those two things. The marketing proposition has to be clear, et cetera, et cetera. There's quite a lot of nuance.
As I think you know, in my new book, How to Score in Hollywood, its focus is on the pre-green light stage.
Yes.
And understanding the notion of sizing your audience correctly.
Yes.
Thus comping it correctly.
Yes.
Too many people comp incorrectly, and they aspire to comps rather than really knowing what they have in terms of the intensity of interest, the number of passionate advocates a movie may bring in. And I see movie after movie being made for too much money and breaking their model. How do you ensure that you are budgeting correctly?
Well, firstly, experience. I think the longer you do it, the more clear-eyed you get, because it's very easy in this bubble that we live in for everybody to get carried away with a certain filmmaker or a certain actor or whatever it is. You really have to look at it with an ice-cold glare. You have to understand the true financial potential of the film in the current landscape today, and you have to take a responsible attitude towards risk. And you asked before, why am I still here? Well, I think one of the things is that I've learned over the years to assess and manage risk, but by doing that in a relatively clear-eyed, I hope sophisticated way, that also then allows you to take creative risk, because financial risk and creative risk go hand in hand.
Tom Rothman speaks about that very much in the book.
Right. And you can't really take creative risk, particularly in the current economic environment, without taking some financial risk. So you have to find a way to marry the two in a way that's going to work.
What's a time when it didn't work for you? You just broke your own model, or it broke the model because you didn't follow your gut?
Didn't follow our gut. Oh, there's been a few.
Or your spreadsheet, quite frankly.
Yeah.
There had to be something that you feel like, I love the movie, but I just made it for too much money.
Yeah. We made a film called Poolman, Chris Pine's directorial debut, which was a risky film. And I was happy with it going in. This is a risky movie. It's a screwball noir comedy that's an homage to 70s cinema. That's a pretty esoteric first film for an actor to write and direct.
Oh, he wasn't in it.
He was in it. He was in it.
Oh, so that helped.
Well,
if you weren't in it, would you have done it?
No. But it was always risky. But I really liked Chris tremendously as a partner and as a filmmaker. And I allowed myself maybe to just drink the Kool-Aid by 10%, 20% on
That's how much you lost.
That's how we lost. That's the difference between.
I love that. And I love the honesty because it's only going to help people. I will say that you essentially broke your own model.
Yeah.
And I think that is what's really important here. If you stick with it, I have a theory, Stuart, which you may think is a little hyperbolic, and perhaps it is. Every movie, if made and marketed for the right price, should make money. Every movie. Because I've worked on over 5,000 titles. And what I've learned is there is always an audience, maybe for 1, maybe for 10, maybe 100.
Yeah.
But if you know that, you better make the thing for $10,000, or you make it for 11, you're going to lose $1,000. Do you understand?
Absolutely.
And most people will say, how many times in your career have you heard, Stuart, you're not going to believe this, the budget, it's only 1.2. And you're like, well, that could be 1.1 more than it should be.
Yeah. I often hear we could make this for less than $15 million. And I think, yeah, you should make it for $10 million, less than $15 million.
That is a great line.
Yeah.
And I use it all the time, I must say. Not that particular case, but very similar. When I go into film schools, I said this a number of times, I'll kind of trick the students. I'll get one little sucker from the class of 60 and I'll say, who's going to pitch me a movie? And someone will pitch. First, I say to them, who is this movie for? What do they always say?
For everybody.
Exactly. But it's not for everybody, because then I ask the class, okay, I'm going to give you some choices here. Based on this concept, I'm going to read the concept. I'm definitely interested in it, probably not, or definitely not. And you'll see who's definitely interested. 3 hands go up. One is his roommate and the other one's a frat brother. And the guy who pitched it. 10 hands go up of probably interested, probably not, maybe 36 hands.
Yeah.
And usually they don't hate on other students. You get maybe 2 or 3 at the end or whatever. You get where I'm going? So they see in front of everyone that they're A, they don't have a movie for everybody. And B, they don't even have buy-in from that many people who are positive about it.
Yeah.
And I say, what's your budget? They say $4 million. I said, where did you get that? Well, my friend is a line producer and he did a budget for me. I said, but based on what? Based on what?
Yeah.
And again, it could be $3.8 million too much.
Yeah. Look, there's always push-pull in that area. One of the privileges of what I do is I get to work to partner essentially with often world-class filmmakers in finding a way for them to make their film.
Fair play. But in fact, you used a phrase just then, which I really appreciated. I just don't think that if they are missing that much, they're certainly not asking the right questions, and they don't have the right makeup to do what you're suggesting of having the fiduciary responsibility along with the creative vision. Mm-hmm. You need both.
You do need both.
And if you don't have one, you're going to lose money,
right,
most likely, because it's a hard business to make money in.
Right. But it's interesting. There are filmmakers who do, sometimes unexpectedly so, but I made a movie with Doug Liman a few years ago, and Doug's used to doing huge studio films.
I think that guy's a genius, by the way.
Right. He got it, and we made it for the right number, and we made money on the film. I made a movie with Ron Howard recently.
Which one?
Eden.
I love that movie, Eden. I thought that was a terrific picture. The problem with Eden, I think, was it was a bit of a feathered fish.
Yeah.
In that, and feathered fish can work, meaning a feathered fish doesn't swim nor fly. But at the same time, it was a suspense thriller, and it had this sort of dramatic element to it. It had a mystery to it. There was a lot going on there.
Yeah. And look, we were well aware of that going in. But
who wouldn't back Ron Howard?
Right. Well, also back Ron Howard at the right number. Ron was responsive and very diligent about the budget. He brought it in at the number that we asked him to bring it in at. And ultimately, we'll be fine on that film. And in some ways, although it wasn't perceived as a success because the theatrical box office was pretty low, it's actually a good case study in risk management, because that allowed me to partner with a world-class filmmaker and a hero of mine on making what was ostensibly a little bit of a risky film, but nobody's going to get hurt because we managed our risk up front. We sold all the international rights almost exclusively to Amazon up front. We covered a big portion of that budget.
So that means that there is no one that will lose money on this?
No.
And many movies, there is someone who's holding the bag.
Someone's nearly always holding the bag on independent films.
But you managed your risk correctly.
Right.
Boy, that would be a great case study to unpack.
Right.
You and I should do that on a panel sometime.
So we managed our risk correctly. On Rick Linklater's movie, we made a lot of money.
Which one?
Hitman. We made a lot of money, but we managed our risk going in.
Did you make the second one?
The film subsequent to Hitman?
Yeah.
No, there's a TV spin-off that we're working on.
That's what
Netflix.
I meant.
Yeah, we're working on a TV
you
spin-off.
You are? Oh,
yeah,
great.
Absolutely.
Great.
I'm still here because we manage risk astutely.
I was just going to ask you, seriously, all hyperbole, all kudos and all that deliciousness aside, why are you still here? And why is Glenn Bassner still here, for example? Like, you guys are two guys, Nick Meyer, same thing. Like, why are you guys at the top of your game still? I mean, for years, what do you do better, stronger, faster than anyone else?
I think it's marrying creative risk-taking with prudent financial investment and then being good at execution.
But let's go beyond that, because I'm going to say there's a lot of people who could probably claim that. I think taste has something to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think deep relationships have a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
You're getting the best material.
Often. And also, I think maybe we're monetizing it better than most, again, because of deep relationships.
You've earned the trust from major financiers to have them take a flyer on you where they won't with a smaller entity.
That's true. All the banks will lend to us when they're generally pretty risk averse these days. We have major international distributors and broadcasters who will pre-buy films from us because they have a high level of confidence in the execution and our capacity to deliver. The foreign sales market is not easy right now, but as I said earlier, it still works perfectly well when you can click into the groove of motivated buyers wanting to pre-buy the project making sense. And we're still good at that. And it's still a good business when you do it astutely.
What turns you on within your business the most? The deal making initially, the obtaining the financing, the acquisition of the material. Where do you, Stuart, have the greatest passion?
Building something, building an asset, building a library.
Oh, you mean the macro of it?
Well, absolutely the macro.
So the company of it.
The company of it. But then also it's the body of work. They're one and the same. We have a library. We've only been around for 6 years or so, but we own about 40 films and TV
shows. Do you really
shows.
Already?
Yeah. So we own those. We'll own them forever unless and until we sell the library. And also I can look at that and say that's a body of work that we created or certainly helped create in a material way. And I find that motivating. And then, of course, as a business person, the fact that you're creating an asset that is worth tens of millions of dollars, hopefully hundreds of millions of dollars one day, that's a good way of getting yourself out of bed in the morning.
Let's talk about our business.
Mm-hmm.
It's changing before our eyes.
Yes.
I have gone on record a number of times saying that I think there's great opportunity. I will subsequently get calls from several friends who will ask me to lunch to explain what those opportunities are.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling you agree with me.
Absolutely.
I'd like to know where you think they are and where you think this business is heading in the next 3 to 5.
I'll talk in the context of the independent film business because ostensibly that's what I know. I'm actually optimistic about the independent film business. It has always reinvented itself. It is a business that almost by definition operates outside of the mainstream studio system, or these days the studio and streamer system. And although in times of change, I think independent film sometimes feels the pressure or feels the pain first, it's also the first to adapt. And I think the business model of independent film is evolving. I think it will continue to evolve. And I think there's a good business model at the end of it for those of us who can get to the next leg of the journey.
Is the studio system dead?
It's not dead, but it's not expanding. I think it's a tentpole business. It's an event movie business.
Period, full stop.
That's it. And however many studios, we will be left with 3 or 4. They'll put out 12 tentpoles a year. That will be the studio business. The studios have more or less abdicated the universe of intelligent movies for adults.
Yeah.
Independent film has always prospered in that respect, and I think is going to grab the mantle even further. And I think there are audiences globally for authentic voices, original voices, intelligent voices.
Well, I think the word event is something you used. I think studios are in the business and will be in the near future in the business of creating event movies that justify people leaving their homes to go see.
Yes.
And that might be a movie for everybody, most likely will be.
Yeah.
In the case of recent hits like Wicked for Good and Zootopia. At the same time, there are some movies for somebody that could be studio movies that are maybe geared for older and younger men or older men and older women.
Yeah.
But the notion of a lot of the movies that you have made and continue to make are what I call psychographically driven movies that are attitudes and behaviors, and you don't need huge marketing spends to find them. You can get them more strategically, more surgically, more digitally.
Yes.
And that's a great boon for your business, because I would imagine that the studios are basically distribution entities principally and content suppliers secondarily.
Yes.
Where you become the content supplier principally and can use multiple mechanisms for your distribution, studios being one of them.
Right. The theatrical business for independent films is going to be about getting people's attention, but you only need the attention of the people you need to see the film. You don't need everybody's attention the way a mass market studio
it's so
film
funny.
works.
I say that constantly in defense of Netflix, which I think do an amazing job. And people say, well, the quality of the movies. And I say the quality of the movie is great for what you need to see and for what you're supposed to see.
Yeah.
I said, what do you mean by that? And I said, we're not meant to see every movie on Netflix. The design of that company is there are so many different audiences and they're making movies for different people.
Yeah.
And so, as I said, there's an audience for everybody. The sheer ubiquitous nature of that company is sort of brilliant because it has taken the replacement of what was, if you go back 40 years, network television.
Yes, exactly.
Which appealed to the masses.
Yes.
And then cable came in, became much more fractured and fragmented.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what created more of the indie film.
People sometimes make the misassumption that the indie film model was this monolithic thing that did just fine for 35 years and now it's broken. It was always evolving. You mentioned cable. Yeah, the advent of cable television in the 80s and 90s was what enabled people to start financing movies independently because they'd pre-sell those cable TV rights. And that wasn't network television. That was a little bit niche, but it was a revenue source. Then you had the home entertainment boom. People could pre-sell home entertainment rights. Then you had the foreign market boom. People started to pre-sell international. The model was always evolving, and it's evolving now. So,
but far, far, far fewer outlets now is the only problem with the ancillary windows.
I think that will change. So you're right.
Where do they go? Where do they come from?
The problem we have right now is production budgets are too high and P&A marketing costs are too high relative to the revenue that's likely to be obtained, certainly in the initial 3 to 5 years of the film's life cycle.
You're right.
But I believe, I think it's probably a given that production costs are going to come down. It's a given that as marketing becomes more scientific, more data-driven, marketing costs will come down. And I think the post-theatrical model will evolve so that there are more points of revenue.
Where do they come from?
Well, I think that the technology will evolve apart from anything else. Right now, the bane of the independent film sector is that the streamers who typically take that pay one streaming window have decided in the last few years they don't want to pay that much money for independent films.
Or they're not fully exploiting. There's a point of which they only need it for X amount of time.
Right.
By holding on to it, they'd be far better to sell it to a third or fourth window.
Absolutely. And I think there's an
Is that happening more now, Stuart?
Yeah, there's an irrefutable logic to the fact that streamers should not hold on to these rights in perpetuity worldwide.
Are you seeing that happen?
Absolutely. You can carve out free TV rights or AVOD rights or EST rights, split international territories. That is a big part of the future. It's evolving all the time. I think the streaming business will also get more competitive for independent movies. I'm actually quite bullish on the model for those of us that can stay in the game and keep doing good stuff for the next 2 or 3 years.
I'm bullish on what you do, very much so. AI is certainly going to have not a little effect, a tremendous, a mind-boggling effect on our business. None of us know how it's going to play out, but if you consider what it can do, one of the positives, I think, is that the democratization of movie making is only going to get bigger and more intense.
Absolutely.
But it has to drive costs down. It's not going to be good for certain craftspeople and certain performers and so forth. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a great deal of opportunity using AI to create all kinds of things.
The barrier to entry is going to get lower.
Exactly. But
on a global basis as well. Let's not forget that.
Oh, and homegrown product.
Right.
I just saw technology that's essentially, I can't imagine it not putting out the dubbing business. It's using the actor's voice to speak in Mandarin, in French, in Spanish, English, in Turkish.
Which is just going to accelerate the accessibility of non-English language content coming into the US, and English language content potentially proving even more popular overseas. Marry that to the fact that because of the lower barrier to entry in terms of production costs, you have, whether it's Latin America, whether it's Africa, where you have huge amounts of talent, but right now they are capital starved, or if you have the Middle East, where you have also rapidly evolving societal structures, a burgeoning creative class, states where the population is 70% of the people are under the age of 40, and of that 70%, 2/3 of them speak English perfectly. We're going to see so much more international filmmaking in the next 3 to 5 years and the next 10 years, which again, the independent film sector has always been the place where people take risks, where originality finds a pathway. And it's hard not to be super optimistic about the creative potential of that in the coming years.
I agree. And the bar to quality has risen, meaning quality is a ticket to entry now. There's just too many great things out there. Good is not good enough. It hasn't been for a while. But even if you're making a movie, I talk about democratization of movie, you better be making a great movie. And there's going to be a lot of young stars out there, young filmmakers who are going to make great little movies. I mean, that's just the way of the world, isn't it? In terms of the talented ones will ultimately get through and succeed. But nobody wants to see subpar content on any platform. No one wants to see things that are, like in our day growing up, direct-to-video movie. That doesn't exist anymore. Everything's got to be great.
Right.
And so I think for my business, I'm excited about it because more testing, more aiming for the best version of whatever it is, which excites me a lot.
Right.
Let me ask you what you would say to a young person in film school today coming up in the world. What should they be doing? What should they be thinking about vis-a-vis where the world is going?
Well, if they're a creative person, I think despite the business challenges, despite the audience fragmentation challenges, I think there's a evolving and increasing demand for authenticity and originality. And I think my advice would be never lose sight of that in your creative endeavors.
And the only thing I would add to that, which I think is brilliant advice, is what you said before. Keep your financial and fiduciary hat on while also keeping the creative hat on, because you can't have one without the other.
Right.
And again, I go back to How to Score in Hollywood. I wanted to unpack that because it means so much to me. And the success and I think the ultimate growth of our business is going to depend on responsible filmmaking.
Yes, absolutely.
Responsible filmmaking.
Right. And, they say necessity is the mother of invention. Responsible filmmaking doesn't necessarily mean compromising on creativity. It just means doing it at the right number.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Stuart Ford, thank you so much for being here, for joining me. You've been a friend of mine for I don't know how many years now, and I've watched you grow. So proud of your success, and I just hope that we have many, many more years of working together.
Well, here's to that. It's been a real pleasure, Kevin. Thank you.
To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. For more insights into filmmaking, audience testing, and the business of Hollywood, I invite you to check out my books, Audienceology and How to Score in Hollywood, at Amazon or through my website at kevingoetz360.com. You can also follow me on my social media. Next time on Don't Kill the Messenger, I'll welcome veteran television executive and former chairwoman and CEO of Warner Brothers Entertainment, Ann Sarnoff. Until then, I'm Kevin Goetz, and to you, our listeners, I appreciate you being part of the movie-making process. Your opinions matter.